I'm sitting on my couch. I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, I'm studying business. I have no, like, I literally clueless. I'm sitting on a couch and watching, like, I think the Late Show. I mean, the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And then that's when I had my light bulb moment. I was like, dude, you're literally always talking about movies. You're watching them. You're telling people about them. Why not you? And then I was just like, wow, like, did I just find like what I wanted to do, for the rest of time? And since that day until now, it's definitely not been fun. There's definitely, a lot of anxiety, a lot of other things and stuff like that. In fact, I was always questioning whether I would even get to that stage because what my parents always said was save up and then go do what you want. So that's still what I'm trying to do. But at the same time, I feel like what I really want to do, like, I feel like the time is now. So we're sort of like, I wouldn't say loggerheads, but we sort of have like differences in the way that we're sort of seeing what's going on at the moment.
Hey guys, welcome to the new episode of Telugu Saga. Thank you so much for joining. Today's topic is about how to find your passion and grow through it. In this abundant world, one of the hardest things to do is find something you love. One may even ask, why do we even need to do anything? Well, when you start doing things that you want, that you desire, that you love, where the whole world around you just stops, it's a feeling and an experience that one will cherish, an undeniable satisfaction, and gives you a purpose to live. Today, we're going to take the time to talk about how to find passion and go with it. To talk about this, we have a wonderful guest here today. Loves writing Telugu movie reviews on his website, tejarao.com. Went to a business school, has done a couple of short films and more to come, and loves tennis. Welcome, Teja.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course, Teja. Uh, glad that you were able to come onto our podcast. So, just one thing that we want to start the podcast with is like a main question, right? So,
Okay.
so Teja, if you were to like define passion, we generally can say that it's a strong desire for something, and that desire can spark the engine in so many ways. But once that spark is made, you have this laser tunnel focus, bringing this new person out of you. First, we need to find out what leads to that spark. What do you think we should do that leads to that spark? One common answer in this case would be like maybe trying a lot of different things. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think passions, I think they really stem from, like, especially when you're growing up, right? Because that's when you sort of try a lot of things, you do a lot of things, right? Like when you're growing up, you don't have as many problems as you do now as an adult, right? Like there's so many more things you didn't even know that problems existed. But I would definitely say the biggest thing is just like, really finding something that you enjoy and just, you keep doing it and doing it, whether that's, playing basketball or like, let's just say for other people, like making a pizza, you never know. It could be something so therapeutic. I think it's really just something that, you do something over and over and over again and you get accustomed to it. And then you're just like, wow, I really like doing this. And the other thing I would say about passion, especially, is just it's something that I think I mean, I think growing up, right, in school, they always said, you have to love your job, you have to love what you're doing, this and that. That is true to an extent. And, at the same time, obviously, too much of anything is obviously bad for you. But the one thing that, or rather, what I'm trying to say is that, when you love something or when, you're really passionate about something and you know that that's what you want to do, then it'll never feel like work. It'll basically feel like a paid vacation, essentially, if that makes sense. Um, so I think the answer is, I think there is no really clear cut answer. I think it's really tailored toward the person and what their definition of passion is. Um, but all I can say is, everybody will have that, you see in cartoons, right, or something, like the light bulb goes off next to their head or whatever. Everybody in their life will have that moment. And once that moment hits you, you'll know, like, okay, now my life has some meaning, as opposed to, just meandering aimlessly.
We always strive to get to that moment, but when do you think the first 18 years of our lives and being able to choose what paths you want in college, you think that's enough time to choose, enough time that you've tried something to choose a certain path, or do we need more time?
I think I definitely say you need more time, right? Because I think I mean, I guess in a way, there's sort of like, I think I've saw it on the internet too. It says you need like 100,000 hours or something, 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. So, I don't know how much I believe that. I mean, I'd like to think it's true, right? Because that's a lot of time. Um, but I think in the end, no, I don't think 18 years is enough time. And to be honest, and this is obviously a different subject. I think what you learn in school, right? Like all these different subjects, they give you knowledge about certain things, but in reality, the practical knowledge that you learn outside the classroom and life experiences, those teach you more about life than 18 years of school and then an extra 4 years of undergrad. And then obviously, if you're being a doctor, an extra 17 years of school, will probably teach you. But I think like I said, right, it depends on the person. So maybe some people find it when they're like 9 years old, and then they'll just, go and do that. Other people will find it, maybe when they're 30 or 40. You never know. But to answer your question, basically, or rather coming back to the basic question, I'm not too sure if 18 years is enough. I'm only saying that because I found what I want to do at 19. That's why, as opposed to 18. But um, no, and like I said, I don't think it gives you enough time to sort of specialize and really, really find what you want to do.
Yeah, thanks for answering that. The goal of that question is to, really, how do we make it easier for people around the world to find their passions? Um, and I think until we graduate college, our life is already structured by these educational systems and from external influences from people that we cannot make any other choices out of our control. Um, and in our experiences, we can do many things outside our job. We have more of the leniency. So, yeah, do you think growing up can affect how your passion is chosen?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think everybody's life is obviously different, right? Everybody's like obviously the way they grew up and did stuff is different, especially nowadays. It's so different from when um in when we were growing up, and it's crazy because I always, like a lot of what is it nowadays? You see a lot of the people, right? They're like born in 2000 or 2001. If you were born in the late 90s, which is when I was born, you wouldn't think 3 years is a large gap, but 3 years is a huge gap of time and sort of, just in the way that people interact and do things. Because I remember when I was growing up, what I would do in a day was obviously go to school, and I'd come back, and I also love playing basketball. So that was also it's still one of my passions. I would just play basketball for like 3 hours straight. I'd just come back home, pull my bag down, go outside, and shoot around on my hoop for 3 hours. Come back inside. I'd be starving, then I'd be exhausted. I'd eat, and then I'd go to sleep. Um, but yeah, I definitely think the way that growing up can influence the way that you sort of think about your passion. Because, like I was saying, right, if you find something that's literally therapeutic for you, that's basically when you're gonna know, like, this is something you love doing. Um, and especially if you do something that doesn't stress you out, then that's an additional factor, right? It's something you generally enjoy. But I think for just and like I was saying before, um, the way they grew up, right? Because I think we're more fortunate than others, as opposed to others who grow up in communities that just like ravaged, or they come from extreme poverty and things like that. I know for a lot of basketball players, right? Like like LeBron and Durant, they came from backgrounds that were just very, they saw a lot of messed up things growing up, and so their mothers, because they knew that they need to get out of this financial situation, encouraged them and pushed them. And now you look at them and like it's ridiculous, right? They're literally two of the biggest superstars on the planet. I think at least they're both worth at least 500 million. And so what was their passion? To get out of what they were going through. They would just play basketball and they just became so good at it. But yeah, I definitely think the way that you grew up can definitely influence the way you get to your passion or you find it. So it's definitely different for everybody. No two people definitely have the same paths. If they do, it's probably pretty rare. So I think that's why they're close to, I think, 8 billion people, right? Not everybody's gonna have the same path. Everyone has a different way.
Great points that you bring out, and you mentioned about you found your passion like when you were like 19, right? So
Yeah,
leading up to that age 19, what were those passions? Could you describe them?
sure. Um, so I'd say in a day, what do I do? Well, no, that's not that's not what I mean. But yeah, what I mean by that is like, what am I passionate about in a day, right? Like, what do I care about essentially? Number one is obviously movies. The other thing is sports. Anything else outside of that realm, it's like it's just noise. It goes past my head. So growing up, I love soccer. I'm a huge fan of the English Premier League. Actually, I literally my weekend is I wake up and I watch soccer from 10 to 2:30, and then I decide what I need to do with the rest of my day. And then obviously tennis and basketball. But I think movies was the biggest outlet. I think that's one of the greatest parts about Telugu culture is just that when you see it all the times in interviews, right? And it's literally true. I think we're blessed to be in a culture that just loves cinema this much. And growing up and doing all these things, it's my dad's fault that I'm so into this because the first movie he ever showed me, at least what I remember, is Kalsan Damra. I'm sure you guys have seen it. So since that day, it's never been the same. I've seen too many, I know too many things, and it led me to create my own site about these things. Um, but basically just having this genuine interest, right? It's being like transported into a different world. And I remember like with my friends, because I went to a school in a very Irish town, so there everybody's white. Like so, we had like 217 kids in our grade. There were two Indian kids. I was one of them. So when everyone was out and about getting blackout drunk, I was going to the theater, watching. They're like, "Hey man, what are you doing this weekend?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to see this movie called Mirchi." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Mirchi." They're like, "What is that?" I'm like, "It's a Telugu movie. It has Prabhas and Anushka." They're like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So things like that. But growing up and just enjoying and really being passionate about these things. And, like I said, right, the more you do or the more you watch, you just tend to have a liking towards something. So I remember in like eighth grade, I would just come back home on Fridays and like I would just binge so many things. I binged like three movies in a row. I remember there's one Friday specifically. I should have never finished it. I was watching Just Ganesh with Ram and Kajal Agarwal. It's an awful movie. And I remember falling asleep and I stopped like halfway through. Then I woke up the next day and finished it. And I was like, I probably just should have left it halfway. Um, but yeah, just watching, so many movies and playing so many sports and just that being my outlet, right, for really just enjoying myself and doing all these things. I think that's really how I sort of got to that stage, in a way.
So that's far. If you were to recollect past few movements that you shared, so basically dig down in your roots, find out how you grew up and what you grew up liking, and spend the time to um, spend more hours learning more about it because you generally love doing it, right?
Yeah,
Um, you know, we may like a lot of things like growing up, like I love eating, I love playing games, um, I like playing basketball. So in this midst of all these likings that we can do, how do you know which one to push forward and spend the rest of the life doing that? it's a huge leap. How did you um, able to achieve that? Your personal touches.
Yeah, so growing up, and this is terrible to say, when I would watch a movie, and I did this as like it was just as like a sham, right? I would literally watch a Telugu movie, and I had this little book. I used to call it direction. I would go into that book, and I would literally write, just change the title of the movie, and then just write story, screenplay, direction, cast, all these things, and just say story, screenplay, direction by me, and then it would run in this sort of imagination that I created. And I never thought seriously of anything, but basically what happened was I had went to a different college, and when I was a freshman, so this was 25th fall of 2015. It was terrible, and I hated it. I came back, I transferred back, and then I had just finished like my first year of college. Right, I'm sitting on my couch. I think it's like August 2016. I'm sitting on my couch. I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, I'm studying business. I have no, like, I literally clueless. I'm sitting on a couch and watching, like, I think the Late Show. I mean, the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And then that's when I had my light bulb moment. I was like, dude, you're literally always talking about movies. You're watching them. You're telling people about them. Why not you? And then I was just like, wow, like, did I just find like what I wanted to do, for the rest of time? And since that day until now, it's definitely not been fun. There's definitely, a lot of anxiety, a lot of other things and stuff like that. In fact, I was always questioning whether I would even get to that stage because what my parents always said was save up and then go do what you want. So that's still what I'm trying to do. But at the same time, I feel like what I really want to do, like, I feel like the time is now. So we're sort of like, I wouldn't say loggerheads, but we sort of have like differences in the way that we're sort of seeing what's going on at the moment. Um, but yeah, since that day, I've just been taking things more seriously, really trying to learn. Okay, what makes a good film, what isn't a good film. Like, did I like this? Did I not like this? Oh, and even if I didn't like it, okay, why did I like it? And what could have been better within that thing. So really just understanding this thing because the craziest thing for me is for most people it's entertainment, but once you realize all the components that go behind watching this 2.5 or 3 hour movie, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that you need to understand before you say, okay, I want to make something, or I want to do something, or I want to accept doing this thing. So literally since that day, um, I've just taken more of an initiative, more of doing this, and just really trying to understand what it takes to succeed in a literally crazy industry where which I did look up, and apparently it's the most competitive industry in the world. So um, yeah.
I would love to make a point from what you said. Many of us who don't know what to do or what to choose, many people look outward. Many people ask people, "Hey, what can I do? What do you think I should do?" But what you did here is quite worthy to mention. Is you looked inward, which is where most of our answers lie until the right questions are raised. So your self-talk, your the confidence you had, and being able to choose a route, and from that point to now, I think curiosity and going above and beyond is what led you to here, right?
Yeah.
Got it. So you found your passion. Um, Finding a passion, choosing it, that itself is a hard journey. Now you got rest of the journey. It's hard to keep up that, and many times passions change, right? It's due to some circumstances. So what do you do once you found your passion? What are the steps you took, and what do you think others should take?
Sure. And like you said, right, changing passions or whatever, I think an example I guess I can give is my brother. He went to school for biology because my dad is a neuroscientist. And then he realized he didn't want to do that. He was just like a completely different went a completely different route. Then he realized, he was always into like graphic design and stuff like that. Um, so he went into that field because that's what he genuinely likes to do. So he had a complete, shift. And I think the one thing I can say is I'm obviously not a fan of it. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I think you'd probably agree, right? In the sense of, I think the way that our culture is sort of situated, not just I think Indian culture, but I think Asian culture as a whole, right? It's very I wouldn't say conservative, but the way that it is they've grown up in sort of situations that aren't favorable. Therefore, that's why they tend to, have the offspring choose something that's relatively safe, such as, within the science field or the medical is science, so, within the medical field or, the engineering field or the computer science field, because that's what's safe. Um, and in a way, the one thing I always do now is I put myself in their shoes and I look at it from their point of view. But at the end of the day, all I can really say is they're allowed to have a say. And I'm not saying to, rebel or do something like that, right? But at the end of the day, the only person who knows you the best is yourself. Like, you know what you want, right? And like you were saying, you can ask others, what are they going to tell you? And if you go to, if you go to meet your relatives, right, you ask your uncles or you ask your aunties, right? Baba, auntie, what should I do? They're going to tell you to choose a safe option because that's what they're used to. They're not going to tell you, and they're like, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, I want to be in entertainment." They're like, "Have you lost your mind? Like, what?" Like, so it's basically based on the culture. But all I can say is once you find it, and it doesn't have to be this field specifically, but whatever it is, just really try to work towards it and try to look at the steps you can take to reaching that goal. Because definitely, if it's in this field, it's definitely not easy. There are a lot of hurdles you have to overcome and this and that. And for me, nobody in my family has ever been in the film industry. So if I do go, I'd be the very first person. Um, but yeah, I think the one thing I can say is just once you find that right, try to sort of, I guess, l- map it or research it of the way that you can really get to that destination. And I hate quoting this movie because it's a meme, but unfortunately, to quote Maharshi, success is not a destination. Success is a journey. So it's really all about finding the steps and finding your way of achieving that and reaching that destination, whatever it may be. Um, but yeah,
So, Teja, like for example, when I was growing up,
yeah,
I always wanted to be a Telugu actor. Like I always saw myself as the hero, and this is,
Whoa.
like that's. I mean, I was a kid, so I had all those like imaginary things, right? And so when I had that conversation with my parents, me being like 9 or 10 years old, they thought I was mad. They're like, y- first of all, like they brought me into reality, right? You're like, you don't have a background in the Telugu industry, you don't seem to actually act or do anything yet. So why would you want to just say that, right? And then growing up later, I realized it was more of a hobby, right? Like I liked watching movies, looking at reviews, and thinking about even short films, for example, right? Um, when it comes to these type of things, how do you differentiate between like your passion and your hobby versus like your profession? Is there like a fine line?
yeah. No, that's a great question. I think a lot of people ask this too, right? I think some people say it as well, and I'm pretty sure Balaya said this at some event. He's like, like he was like, you can like cinema, just don't love it. And I'm like, then dude, why are you doing your job? Like, if you don't love it, then why are you doing it? But no, no, I'm just kidding. If I heard any Balaya fans, I'm sorry. We love Jay Balaya. Um, but no, there's definitely a very thin line, like you said, right? I think the best way I would define is your passion is like something you really genuinely care about, and you get like emotional if you're talking with someone and like they're not necessarily on the same page, you get heated over it, as opposed to a hobby, which is something that's like you would. It's what is it? How do I describe it? It's something you enjoy doing in your free time, but you wouldn't necessarily, dedicate your entire life's work, or you wouldn't put all your energy into it. So for some people, you could make your hobby your passion, which is what I did. Um, but I don't necessarily think you have to, if that makes sense. So, and like you're saying, right, the realistic expectations. Like, I love playing basketball. It's a hobby of mine. And can I go to the NBA? Not a chance, right? Um, so yeah, it's basically like, but yeah, you could definitely walk a fine line. Um, but once again, I think it depends. It definitely depends on the person. Uh, but I think your hobbies will tend to be hobbies, and your passion will tend to be your passion. But there's definitely room for it overlapping.
I was just gonna add on to that. I mean, like when you went to your parents and you said, "Hey, I'm gonna be, you know, thinking of acting in like some short films or doing these movie reviews," what was their first reaction?
It was obviously negative, because the thing with this job, especially, right, is and like you said, right, it depends on how much you wanna, uh, how far you want to like go into it. It could definitely be a hobby, right? You can do you can do a million background. You can be the background in a million movies, but that's not going to get you anywhere. And you can do 100 short films, but that's not going to get you anywhere if you don't do it full time. So it definitely wasn't something they were necessarily supportive of, right? Because it goes back to the whole culture thing, right? They don't want to see me struggle like how they struggled, and I understand that. But at the same time, it was definitely a risk that I was willing to do. And I think parents are parents, right? Eventually, they'll all come around. If anybody harbors a grudge, then I don't really think they are your parents. Like, I'm sorry to say that, but and it goes back to what I said before, right? Like, they can tell you 100 things, and like 90% of it will be right. But at the end of the day, nobody knows yourself better than you. So it's really all about what makes you happy. Because the way that I see it is, and it's not necessarily this black and white, but is it just, do you want to listen to them and do something because you want to see them happy, but internally you know that you'll just hate your life every day? Or is it something that you know that you really want to do, and you'll be happy for the rest of time, and they wouldn't necessarily like it, but when you go to sleep at night, right, you will have that satisfaction of knowing that there's, you know, like I'm doing what I want to do, and there's nothing like. And the best example I can give of that is you guys have seen the movie Kick, right? That's the scene. Actually, I didn't understand it when I was younger. Now I understand it. There's a scene. I think it's right before the flashback, or maybe it's during it, when they reveal that. And this is not a, if anybody's watching that has seen the movie, I'm sorry, you should have seen it. But I think it's either before the flashback or during it, when Ilyana goes to visit Saji Shinde, and she's like, "Sir, like, why is your son a thief?" And he literally tells her that when he was growing up, he wanted to be like an engineer or something, but then he had to settle for being a bank manager, and he doesn't like it, but he's doing it because he needed to support his family. And he's like, when I go to work every day, like, it's fine, but when I go to sleep, right, there's still that regret when I like go to sleep of being like, oh man, I could have been doing what I like, but it just really hurts me inside that I'm not, and I had to settle for something else. So yeah.
That was a great question, Michelle, and that brought up a lot of terms that I would like to re-mention. Right? You got hobbies that might turn into passions, and there's this, another professional career path you may choose. So there's just a lot of things that one can think of, and your life can seem a lot of chaotic because there's just so many things out there. Um, how do you, with the mindset, like, they say begin with the end in mind, like vision yourself in the future, and how can you start now to reach there? So how do you, Teja, if you were starting your life again, like earlier in your career, like how do you be calm and still just enjoy life because that's what we should do and still plan your way out to reach whatever your purpose is? Like how do you, because in the college years, it's life happens so fast, man. In those 3 4 years, like
Yeah.
how do you spend the time effectively with happiness and just still do what you want to do?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I think there's again, right, it's sort of like the moral dilemma in a way. Well, let's say you stepped onto campus when you were 18, but then that light bulb went off and you're just like, oh, I want to do something else. You could realistically drop out. But the question is, I think the real thing we always have to ask ourselves is sort of the financial stability, right? Because you can't be broke. Well, I mean, you can be broke. What I'm saying is you don't want to be broke. That's what I meant to say. So realistically, whatever you're trying to do, right, you sort of have to really hustle or do this and do that. And there are so many stories, not just entertainment specific, but like so many people who succeeded, right? They were in such a bad financial position of doing this and doing that. So I think it really becomes um, it's sort of I wouldn't say double-edged sword, but you sort of have two options the way that I see it, in the sense of you complete high school and then you can go and do it. And obviously, depending on how much you have in your bank account, you'll be set for a certain amount of time. As opposed to you go to college, you get your degree, and then you can still do what you want because you have that backup. But at the same time, it becomes a question of okay, how broke am I? That's just the way that I see it from my perspective, right? Um, And the interesting thing is, if you look at any of the top stars in Tollywood, or I think in Tollywood, um, half of them did go to college, even though we all knew that they weren't going to use they weren't going to use their degree, but half of them did, and the majority of them went to a place called Loyola. Literally, everybody went there. So people like Mahesh Babu, Karti, so Surya's brother Surya, and I'm sure Vijay, the superstar in Tamil. Um, all these people, and I'm pretty sure Venkatesh went there as well, if I'm not wrong. So all these people, they all went there. They got their degrees, even though, like I said, they knew that they probably weren't going to need it. Um, so yeah, I think it's really just about how willing are you um, to sort of pursue what you want, and how I guess broke are you willing to be in order to succeed. So like I said, right? It's about that decision. Do you either go after high school after you get your degree, or do you just do it from when you're like 2 years old and then you eventually get there? There's actually a guy. His name is Teja Saja. You guys have probably seen him in a few movies. He was the lead in Zombie Reddy. He was also in Oh Baby. And the reason he looks so familiar is because he was a child actor. If you guys have seen, you've obviously seen it. If you guys have seen Indra, the Chiranjeevi movie, the child Chiranjeevi is that kid. So now he's grown up and this and that. So there's also that option. So you've been doing it for a very young age. But yeah, I think those are really the ways that I see it. Right? It's all sort of because that's literally it. And I see so many things in the sense of um, I don't know if you guys know who Chase Stokes is. If you guys have seen the show Outer Banks, it's on Netflix. So he's 29 years old, and he talked about like how he got the role. Right, he was literally being evicted from his apartment because he was broke. He was sleeping in his car in a parking lot by a movie theater, and yeah, he had like negative money in his bank account. So, but now he's set for or rather, he will be set for like because of how big the show got. But yeah, I think it's really just about understanding your financial situation, right? Being willing to dare to take that step, and really just seeing just seeing where you go, and hope that you hang in there and everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, when one sets out to do something, it may seem um, the whole world is against you and you're on the other side. So have you ever been in a low point in your life, which We all will face someday. How did you get up, and what are some things that will help us in the future get up?
Sure. Actually, happened very recently after I left my current job. Right, like I wanted to do this full time, but I couldn't because my parents were just very adamant that. And the thing was, I was actually going to move to Los Angeles, take the thing seriously because you hear so many stories, right? People going over there and obviously they go broke or whatever. But I understand the financial situation. They were just like, no, it would be a terrible move. I was gonna go, but then I just sort of really had to think about it and being like, because if you don't have a car in LA, it's almost like it's almost impossible to get around. Because you'd be Ubering everywhere, and let's just say in a day, right? You had to go. Let's say you had to go somewhere 3 times in a day, 3 times in the sense of just going there and then coming back, right? That's like 200, $300 in one day, and depending on how much you have in the bank, and they're what, like there's anywhere between 28 to 31 days in a month. So depending on how many trips you have to make in a day and how many times you need to go out in a week, all of that is going to add up. And if you're only accounting right for the rent money, which is like what anywhere, well, it depends. Let's just say you were spending $2,000 for rent. I think your savings or whatever you had would disappear like that, literally in the blink of an eye. And the next thing I know, I'd be evicted from my department. I'd be on the streets, you know, um, and and doing something like that. But um, I just I had to keep using the same advice, right? It was like do something, and then once you get a concrete offer, you just handed that resignation letter, and you'll be good to go. So that's really the goal right now. I think that's what I would tell people that want to do something. Um, like you should be always doing something, but just make sure that it's flexible. So at the moment, unfortunately, I'm sort of like leading two lives in a way, in the sense of having to work from 9 to 5, and then once I get back, just on a hustle of trying to make, trying to elevate this other thing, um, in terms of stuff like that. So it definitely wasn't easy. It was definitely a low point, but I just had to make the executive decision of being like, okay, I've fallen. Now I got to get back up, and the only way up is just you just keep going up. I don't think you can go back down. So I think that's really the mindset that I was in.
What a mindset. I think we all face that low point. In say in a hypothetical situation, you were to see yourself at the age of like 10 or 11, for example, but you can actually see the person, right? Like that's you in the past. Would you, like, in a hypothetical situation, would you actually go to yourself in the past and actually give yourself advice? Would you or would you not?
It's a great question. Um, I would say no, only because I feel like those experiences, right? They sort of make you the person who you are, and if you were able to sort of change that, I don't necessarily think it would be to say. I think the best example of that, and it's not, I don't think it's directly related to this in a way. I guess maybe is I was actually born in San Diego, and when I was 2, I had moved to the East Coast, and I always ask myself the question, what if, right? What if, what if I had stayed in San Diego? What if would I be as passionate about Telugu movies? Would I be as passionate about all these things? Would I have the friends that I have now? Would I still have been able to go to the university that I went to and met all these people and had all these experiences, right? Um, but I think the one advice like I'd probably give the person is really just like really cherish these years. Like literally cherish them as much as you can because they're not coming back. And within the blink of an eye, you're gonna have a lot of problems. Um, but yeah, I think on the experience side, I don't know if I would give myself any advice other than the fact that, just really enjoy these years because being a kid is the best time of your life, and you can't go back to that.
How did you conquer fear and build courage for your passion to make short films?
How do I conquer fear and build the? Sorry, what was it? Conquer fear and build courage.
Yeah. Do you listen to ballet dialogues and just
No.
beat up the
Jay
nerves?
Balea.
How did I conquer the? I think the biggest thing when you're starting out, right, is literally, and what is it? I was watching an interview once, right, with Kevin Bacon. I think he was on Conan, and he talked about when Footloose had come out, so the old one, which made him a star. He thought he was ready for, like, the fame that was going to happen, right? But the reality is nobody is ever ready for that. And the reason I brought that up is I think the biggest fear every time is literally putting yourself out there and letting people know that you sort of exist, and you sort of do this, or you sort of dabble in this, right? Um, because there's always a fear of being judged. And what I realized is, especially in life or just school or anything, right? You can't be liked by everybody. You can try, but the reality is you can't. Um, and I think just really putting yourself out there and sort of conquering the fear. Because the one thing I'm not used to is I actually never knew this, which is faces are actually asymmetrical. So actually, the way that you look at yourself in the mirror, you'd think you'd look the same on screen, but it's actually not. Um, so the faces that you see, they're actually asymmetrical, um, which was the most crazy thing to me. And so what I mean by that is when I would take a selfie, everything looks aligned. But then when I saw myself on screen, my right side looks like the way that I see myself in the mirror, but the left side looks completely different. And I started freaking out. I was like, how how do I change this? But I think, like I said, right, the more you do something, the more you get accustomed to it. You'll definitely get used to it. So I think really just trying to conquer it in the beginning is really just putting yourself out there, and you just have to keep hustling and just keep doing it. Because with fear, um, I think overcoming fear builds courage, if that makes sense. Um, so
There you
in
go.
the end, yeah. So
Dropping some lines. Yeah.
so overcoming fear definitely builds courage, and then by the time you get to whatever, if you get to a certain point, I guess, in your life, or a certain level or whatever, it'll just become second nature. You'll just be like, okay, yeah, there are people that don't like me, but at the same time, I'm doing what I like. So at the end of the day, I think that's the only satisfaction that you need.
Well said, buddy. Um, so I want to restate that. Um, Fear builds courage, correct?
Yeah,
And I also want to talk about an author who wrote the book, How to Think Big. And he says, action cures fear. And we just delay up to that point. We don't take that action. Um, so action is obviously the important part, but we neglect it. And action of baby steps is underestimated. Compound effect is underestimated, right? Um, people can are earning degrees at 60 and starting companies both 20 and at a later age 50. So we shouldn't be limiting any factor to put ourselves out there, like you said.
yeah,
Um, and belief is the utmost thing that will is going to survive you. Like you know have that passion exist. It's the self belief. And so, um, Deja, if you were to sum up the whole conversation, what's an actionable advice you would tell the audience?
yeah. I mean, if there's anybody out there, right, who's listening to this or is gonna watch this, one thing I would say is, um, I guess don't stress on Anything too much, like you will all have your light bulb moment.
Mhm.
Obviously, some will have them, earlier than others. Um, but once you know what it is, just relentlessly work to achieving that, because it's depending on what it is, it's definitely not going to be easy, right? Everybody has their different goals and whatnot. It's really just about having that light bulb moment and really just mapping out the way that you're going to get there. Because there's that saying, which is, um, I think, a plan failing to plan with it's something. It's sort of like a tongue twister, right? It's like if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Yeah. So that's what I would say. So basically, try
Can you
to
dissect that? Because it's a really good one.
yeah, I mean, if you go tell someone, hey, I'm gonna you go tell someone, hey, I'm I'm gonna be the next, Rajmouli. They can be like, oh, cool. How? They'll be like, yeah, I'm just gonna walk up to walk up to Dil Raju, or walk up to Suresh Babu. I'm gonna walk up to the producer of Bahubali, or walk up to, Harika Hassan Creations, and be like, yeah, I want to make a movie. Okay, well, what have you done? Oh, nothing. I'm just really passionate about it. Literally every single person would tell you to go F yourself. Every single person, right? Okay, that's a great goal to have. You want to be the next Rajmouli. How are you going to get there? Right? Are you going to blatantly plagiarize his films? I'm not saying you should do, I don't recommend that because that's not what you should be doing, but are you going to, become an assistant director on a serial? Are you going to join Raghavendra Rao as an assistant? And then are you going to go and narrate a story to Junior NTR? And then is he going to accept it? What's the path you're going to take to get to that stage? So it's really about having a plan, really mapping it out, and being like, okay, how do I get from point A to point B? And you just work towards it. And, like I said, it's not, depending on what it is, could be very easy, could be very hard. Um, but at the end of the day, it's really all up to you. It's up to you to put in that work. It's up to you to achieve your dreams. It's up to you to find your passion. And so you can sleep at night with no regrets.
Deja, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your time. And it's really, to put it out there, no one has the answers to everything, but we, us three together, took the time to lay out the whole passion thing that people talk about and kind of strive for something. Um, your is it call it your destiny, call it something else, but it's really to question what's going on and um, just play along, play the life of game, just go through it, whatever you're going through. So it's this was great. It We got some really uh, great answers from you and something to take home. Um, yeah, thank you, Teja.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Teja, before we go into the fun round, right? It just I think what you said really would resonate to a lot of the viewers because w- based on our culture, right? Of course, we are cinema lovers, and we're fortunate to be in that. But it's just that sometimes we don't have that courage, or sometimes we don't have that backing from our parents to actually pursue, our passion, right? Or a particular passion in this field. So definitely, I think some viewers are going to, keep an open mind and really appreciate you doing those words. And to all the Telugu Saga, like audience, thank you for always supporting us, and we'll hope to be back with another great episode.